Thank you, Lara. My name is Mike Shack. I'm alcoholic. And my sobriety date is May 9th of 1989. And my home group is Pass It On in Burien, Washington. And my sponsor bailed on me. He just moved to Yakima, so I haven't had a lot of contact other than the phone with him lately. But anyway, thank you, Lara, for asking me to talk about my favorite subject. And yeah, I don't know. The whole suspect thing, it was kind of foggy. But lately, with a lot of the meetings were closed and the whole Zoom thing, and I haven't been able to pick up a lot of new guys in the last 2 years. But I had one guy I was drilling on to get him in here, and he bailed on me. So that's how it works. And I guess you could say November 1st, 1965 was like a dark day in my family's history, because that's the day I was brought into this world. And I started out as I had some things happened when I was 2 and 3 years old that you know probably I had not a whole lot of control over and things. But I was abused, and I was abandoned, and a lot of crazy shit happened to me when I was real little, that I didn't know how significant that was going to be until I got sober, actually. So anyway, I was actually, what I was like. I was a pretty. I don't know. I thought I was a pretty decent guy until I turned 10, and then and, and then then it started, with the 10-year-old smoking weed, whatever. That's how it works. But when I turned 11, somebody handed me a fifth of Thunderbird wine, and I drank the whole thing. I didn't know I was supposed to just take a sip and pass it, right? I didn't know how this whole thing was supposed to work. But anyway, I guzzled this bottle of Thunderbird wine at 11 years old. And, I got sick. I got beat up. I got blacked out. I passed out. And I came to the next day, and I knew I had found my answer. That was my solution to life. That was it. I had all these things, going, and I could never put anything, I just could never figure out where I fit in. And once I had that booze in me, I was there, and I had arrived. And so I think alcohol kept me alive until I found Alcoholics Anonymous, because that was my solution. Drugs and alcohol were my solution. So I drank as long as I could and as hard as I could until, for 10 years, I just knew. One morning I came to, and I drank the last 11 beers I had out of a 12 pack, and I had the 12th one in my hand. And I just knew if I drank that beer, I was going to die. And I poured that beer down the sink, and, and I went up those stairs at Old Serenity Hall. Because I remember when I was a kid, the Renton Area Youth Services, the Renton Police, the schools, my mom, everybody was trying to figure out what was wrong with me. So, and this judge I'd go to the park and drink and walk home. And like 28 times in 1 month, a cop pulled up on me and caught me walking drunk. And the judge thought that I had a problem then. I was 13, and I couldn't believe the guy caught me every time. But I walked through the same street at the same time of night, and I can't believe that they figured it out. But, so I knew they made me go to this meeting at Serenity Hall. So I was 13, so that must have been about 78 maybe. And it was weird. The room was dark, And I didn't know about candlelight meetings at that point in my life, but everybody in there was smoking, and everybody in there was at least 100 years old, and I knew I didn't fit in. I can't be one of these guys. So when my mom picked me up an hour later, I was at the bottom of those stairs and I was drunk. And so by the time I knew I couldn't drink again, I at least knew where I had to go, because I wasn't the guy that people offered. Nobody offered me treatment. I didn't know anything about treatment. I didn't, when I get in trouble, I never was offered, home detention. I was, basically, if I was out of jail and I was awake, I was drinking, and that's how it went. And so I think when I walked into Serenity Hall, that when I was 21 years old, that's when I met Lara. Lara was, I think, 17, I think, when I met her. And so there was a lot of younger folks there, but I sat there, and at the end of the meeting, people said, "Keep coming back no matter what." And I thought, I'd never been asked to return anywhere I ever was my whole life. And that was cool. And then I realized that I just went an hour and a half and I wasn't in jail and I didn't have a drink. And that was that first little spark of hope that I got out of this whole thing. And so I thought, well, maybe if I come back tomorrow, maybe I can do it again. I don't know. And so, yeah, it was just one of those things. Like I woke up this morning and I knew, with just knowing that another drink is going to kill me. And, I'm one of those guys, the big book, it says, we can't ingest alcohol in any form whatsoever. And that's me. I know that I can't do that. So what are my options, right? I sat around meetings and I didn't drink. And then I asked like 3 guys at Serenity Hall if they'd sponsor me, because I'm like, everybody's talking about sponsoring. All 3 of them said no. And all 3 of them gave me great reasons, and I agreed with them, right? And and I asked a couple old timers, hey, what about smoking a little weed? And they said, this is Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said, fair enough. So I didn't talk about the joint I was smoking after the meeting. And I did that for a couple of years, but it was without alcohol, it was the first time in my life that I was able to not have to move out of the apartment every 2 months. I was able to keep a job. I was able to stay out of jail. So then, a couple of years later, I went to the North Coast Roundup in Seaside, and that was in April of '89. And I looked around and I thought, man, you know what? I'm going to try this without drugs, I'm going to try this whole clean and sober thing and see how that works out. And as it turned out, the next month I went to a meeting in Burien around a bunch of people that I really didn't know. And they asked if anybody was new. I said, yeah, I got it. I got one day today. And it just didn't feel right. So I went back to Serenity Hall. And by that time, we'd moved up the hill. And I said, man, I got one day today, and I don't care who knows it. And that was May 9th of 1989. And that's how this whole thing started. And then I would sit around, just go to meetings, go to work, do my thing. And I did that for about a year, a little over a year. And I didn't understand the whole fatal progressive thing, the whole untreated alcoholism thing. Without my treatment, without my solution, I was just getting more and more nutted up. And some gal, after a meeting, she took me aside and she said, you know what? You know what your problem is. Why don't you go find some closed meetings and some big book studies and find out what the solution is, and then come back here and tell these people what you found. And first I thought, I don't know who you are, woman, but you need to, leave me alone. And but she was right. I knew something had to change, and she could see it. And you get the message when you get the message, right? So I got almost a year, and then this whole international convention thing comes through Seattle, and I was like, I want to go down there and check that out. And I got stuck with the cowboy hat and the green vest, and I'm on the corner outside the Kingdom Point, showing people which way they wanted to go, and then I just got that day. I just said, man, I got to have this way of life. I got to do this. So I found a home group, and I asked this guy be my sponsor, and he said, if you punch me, stab me, or shoot me, you're fired. And I thought, that's pretty weird for a guy to say some shit like that, right? But I didn't know that he was going to be talking really mean to me. So I didn't know he was going to be hurting my feelings so much, So, but now I can understand why he said that, because there's many, many times, right? So like, from the very beginning, I was always afraid for people to see me make a mistake. And your first time I was going to pour coffee, right? I'm right-handed. If I don't have a softball glove on this hand's useless. And I got the decaf in this hand, and I just know if I spill the coffee and somebody laughs, I'm going to punch them. That's the way it is. Because it was just, and then you learn over time that, in Alcoholics Anonymous, I think, that people like you for your strengths, but they really love you for your weaknesses, and to be vulnerable, and just, that's where the home group came in, where I just, spilled beans, where people got to know me and not know who I was. And my sponsor would oddly enough, I had really long hair, and he said, you're one of the lucky ones, Mike. Anytime you want, you can just grab your ponytail and pull your head right out of your ass. And I thought, man, this guy is really getting on my nerves. But we struggle. But he said, let's just open the book, and we're going to find out. You're going to learn the truth about who you are, and that's going to be sufficient enough for you to live this life clean and sober. So I said, all right, I'm down. I'll do, because I knew I couldn't drink. I knew something had to change. I started believing in untreated alcoholism, and we started in on that book. And the fun part is like when you're working on your 4th step, right? That's the fun part for me. That was the fun part for me, because I was working on it. And every week I'd go back, yeah, I'm working on it. And usually when an alcoholic says that, the paper's in one room and the pen's in the other. But I was going to this one meeting, and all these people were super old, and they would be like, oh, if you're thinking about it, you're actually on it. And I love those guys, right? I go back to my home group, my sponsor would be like, what's up with your 4th? I'm working on it. So after about 3 weeks of that, he put his arm on my shoulder, and he said, Mike, I don't want you to worry about that 4th step anymore. And I said, what's up with that? And he said, well, that's only for people that are going to stay sober anyway. And see, he knew that I heard some old timers always talking about, breaking down your ego and your false pride. But he knew that that's what he needed to do with me. And the next morning, oddly enough, I found myself alone with the pen and paper, and I wrote out my 4th step. And I started going through all these things that were popping in my head. It's like, if I ever drink again, it ain't going to be because of this. And I wrote that down, and that's how, and I got it all done that day. And then when I did my 5th step, I thought I was supposed to get some kind of gold medal or something. And he said, congratulations, you're almost halfway there. And so just learning just small little truths about myself going through that process. And then, you know, even going through like step two, he says, God either is or he isn't. And I said, he isn't. He said, okay. And we moved on. And we keep moving forward because he just kept pounding into my head. You got to take the action. It's just the action. It's like all through the book. This happens as we do this, right? So you got to just keep moving. And I got into somewhere in step 9. I made an amends to somebody, and I had this spiritual awakening that the book talked about. Just the whole process worked just the way the book read. So I love that book. I love the process. I think it's a simple process made to look difficult by very simple people. And as it turns out, I'm lucky I'm one of them simple guys because the going through, and then you got to go through life. Like when I first got there, I thought, man, here we go. I'm 21 years old. They're going to give me some terry cloth shirt. They're going to stick me in some bowling league, and my life's over, right? And I liked to do all kinds of things, but I had no idea that you could do them without alcohol and drugs. So I was lucky enough to meet a whole group of young folks that absolutely insisted on enjoying life, and showed me that you can have just as much fun going to the Free Spirit Club and then going to the Maverick and drinking coffee until 7 in the morning, and being real with people and just letting people get to know me, because I was by the end of my drinking, I mean, I was walking up the street with a half case of what I thought was pretty good beer. It's Henry Weinhard's Dark Ale, okay?
Oh,
And I knock on this guy. I can't find nobody to have a beer with me, and I got beer. I mean, I knocked on this guy's door, and he said, he opens the door, but the chain's on it. He said, "Go away." I said, "Come on, man, I got really good beer here." And he goes, "Last time you were here, you punched me." And I said, "Open the door. I'm beating your." You know what I mean? It was to that point where nobody would have a drink with me because I was just very unpredictable. And now I got this group of people that all we do is talk and drink coffee and have fun, and there's no alcohol involved, and it was a shock. It was a shock, and it was like, what? Now it's 32 years later, and I just enjoy life. I have a full life. You know, my daughter was born when I was 8 years sober. Relationships didn't really work out. Her mom and I didn't make it, but she's, she used to go to meetings with me. She started babysitting at the meetings, and now she's through college and doing her thing, and all I really had to do is, I didn't know what to do as far as a parent, and I wasn't really supervised when I was a kid, but I just basically sponsored her along the lines of these principles in the program, and she turned out all right, so. And I got a little business I'm running, and it's just, it's amazing to me that I'm still sucking air, because I was not that guy. In our freshman, in our freshman annual at Hazen High School, there's a picture of me laid out underneath the front step. It was career day, and me and my buddy dressed up as hobos, and we had these brown bags and bottles, and that was career day, right? I made it. Right? Set my goal high, and I made it. So yeah, it's been a pretty good way to live, actually, because when I got here, I was, I don't know, we talked about, with my sponsor, we talk about, you know, principles and to talk about character and defects of character. And he said, "Don't worry about that. You're just a defect looking for character, right?" And so he told me all these things that, like, right now, I really want to punch him, stab him, and shoot him. But he saved my life. When I go over to his house, no matter what kind of argument we were having, I'd go to his house, and his big book would be open on the same page as mine was marked when I walked in his door, and we'd just work it out through AA. And I don't know. As long as I don't try to complicate things, it's a pretty simple way to go. Problem is, I break out into these I call it a rash of Shack because my last name's Shack, and I break out into all these different great ideas, and then you just roll with them, and then you find out they're not the really great idea. Go to a business meeting and make a motion and see how that works out for you. It's really good as long as everybody agrees with you. But if you got somebody that doesn't agree with you and they got just as much passion about their sobriety as you do, it gets kind of sticky. And so I got into I asked him about doing when are we going to study these traditions? And he said, "Why don't you go get a service position and watch how they work?" And I thought, God, man, this guy, he just doesn't want to teach me nothing. So we got really involved in the district back in the day, and man, we had a lot of fun at those district meetings, and we had everybody changed hats, and just so getting involved and meeting other people and watching. I wanted to learn. This thing saved my life, so I really wanted to know what it was all about. And I've been fortunate enough to go to Akron and go to East Dorset, Vermont, and see some of the places that this thing started and how these guys had to work. And it's a little bit of work trying to find new guys now with the way the meetings are and the Zoom stuff. So, but I got to stay. No matter how twisted my thinking gets, I've somehow always knew I needed to be tethered to this program somehow, and so when the pandemic first hit, I said, well, I could at least do the night watch, at least answer the phone, no big deal there, and then I'm lucky enough to where my business is kind of a neighborhood gathering place, so a lot of people come by and have a cup of coffee and we talk about life in general, and so I haven't missed out on a lot of the social aspect, I guess, of the pandemic. But so you got to take life on life's terms, and a lot of times you don't want to, but if you just keep trudging, we trudge the road of happy destiny, right? It's not too happy destiny. It's already there, and we keep trudging, and some days are good. I mean, every day is not going to be a first round draft pick, right? You got shit comes up, life happens. I mean, last couple months ago, I've been making a lot of trips to Eastern Washington because my mom got some complications, some brain fog from COVID, and helping her out. But through that, when I first started this thing, when I knocked on her door and told her, "Look, I haven't had a drink in a week," she slammed the door in my face and told me to go tell it on the mountain. And when I came back and said I haven't had a drink in a month, she looked at me and said, "If I see you on my street again, I'm calling the cops." So that's where our relationship started. And now we've been able to mend that. And I remember pretty much the day where I thought, maybe these living amends were working out with her was when my little girl came over. I could see that her and my mom were plotting over in the corner, and I could see them plotting something. So she come running over to me, and she was about 4 years old, and she said, maybe she was 5. She said, I want to leave my sister's house and go spend the night up on the mountain with grandma, but not you, just me. And I thought, that'll be okay. You can go up there by yourself, grandma and grandpa. And when she ran back and told grandma it was okay, I saw the look on their faces, and I realized, maybe I'm getting close to even with my living amends, because then I also realized that was like I drank and drugged from 10 to 23, and I was 13 years sober at that time. So, it took that long to make that realization that, you got 5 miles in, 5 miles out kind of thing. So I've had a lot of great kind of, awakenings and aha moments, they call them, I guess. I don't know. I know I'm not in charge of all this. That's probably the best thing that I can keep remembering, is that I can only do what's in front of me, and then the results are up to my God, my higher power. And so far, I learned these principles as I was going through the steps, and so far it's really not a bad way to live. What I mean? It's really simple, as just lather, rinse and repeat. But simple, but not easy. Things come up and you got to deal with them, and how you deal with them, really, at least I have a blueprint to deal with them now, where when I was younger, it was a drink or nothing, what I mean? So I don't think I have 17 more minutes in me, but I know. But anyway, if you're new here, I would say keep coming back no matter what. And I would suggest just going to meetings and not drinking until you get so miserable that you're ready to ask somebody for help. Because there's always somebody here that'll help. So thank you.